Crush your enemies.
They drew first blood, not me.
See them driven before you.
Oh, my user.
And hear the lamentation of your women.
But I pity the fool.
Glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate.
Phone home.
They're here.
Oh, real light sleeper, child.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in chronological order, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today we're discussing A Little Sex, released April 2nd, 1982. It was written by Robert De Laurentiis, directed by Bruce Paltrow, and released by Universal Pictures.
Bruce Paltrow, like
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Gwyneth.
Kobe Smulders was born 6 days later. Happy birthday to her a long time ago. In May of 1979, Robert De Laurentiis began writing the screenplay for A Little Sex, which was selected by Mary Tyler Moore's television production company, MTM Enterprises, as their inaugural feature film release. MTM struck a deal with Universal to split the film's $6 million budget in exchange for distribution rights for the studio.
Oh man, why didn't MTM go to MGM?
I don't know. That's a good idea. Television director Bruce Paltrow had previously created The White Shadow for MTM and was hired here to make his feature directorial debut. The film shot for 10 weeks in New York City, and ultimately the film was panned by critics, and its theatrical release brought in $2.3 million, less than half of the $6 million budget.
What did they spend $6 million on?
Locations. It's shot in New York with recognizable New York and a lot of Central Park stuff. I feel like they just bothered to get all their ducks in a row and had rights to the areas they were shooting in.
It didn't need any of that.
No, it didn't. And Kate Capshaw wasn't a name, so yeah, weird. The film opens with an extreme close-up of a match head igniting and lighting a cigarette against a black backdrop, a common post-coital activity of the 80s and 90s and cinematic shorthand for sex, but also a sign of addiction, something which will plague the protagonist of this story. Melissa Manchester's performance of the film's original theme, Your Place or Mine, plays out over the opening credits.
Hey, hey, your place or mine. Dim the lights and pour the wine.
The cigarette is ash from tip to filter before it actually tips and crumbles out of the shot, and we fade up on Tim Matheson as Michael Donovan in jogging shorts, racing through the streets of New York City. He connects on his walk with his older brother Tommy, played by Edward Herrmann, to chat for a little bit about life.
It's a bowl of cherries. Haven't you heard? You want to talk about your cherries or mine?
Do you guys recall the last time you heard a character claim that life is a bowl of cherries? They sang it.
Pennies from Heaven?
There you go. That's right.
Nice. Life is just a bowl of cherries. Don't make it serious. Life's too mysterious.
In reality, Michael is here to complain to his older brother about his own sex addiction and wonders aloud what he can do about it.
And you know something else? On top of that, the sex isn't even that good. Ah, the paradox unfolds. The sex is not that good, but you always go back for more.
Michael swears he's going to force himself to stop, and when Tommy asks why, Michael promises to explain himself this weekend.
Are you coming to the family picnic on Sunday? It's at my house, asshole. Ah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you then.
Michael continues his jog through Central Park and stops outside a children's field hockey practice and seems distracted by the ass of the coach, Katherine, played by Kate Capshaw, wearing a shirt with the name of the school on it. But if I saw this shirt at a Goodwill store, I would buy it right now, because in big bold letters it just says Mother of Christ.
I love this shirt so much.
It's awesome.
I want one.
Coach Katherine gathers the girls to encourage them to play smarter, not harder, and sometime later we see Michael following her past a sidewalk market, seemingly already failing in his efforts to stop falling for every woman he sees. They flirt loudly, causing an older customer between them to blush occasionally.
I was wondering if you were half as good in the sack as you were at that net.
I happen to be considerably better.
He asks her to prove it, and she says if he can catch up with her, he can have her wherever they end up. He offers a 5-second head start, but after 2, he books it after her.
1, 2. Said I was fast, not honest.
The camera runs with them across streets, down alleys, all the way up to her building, and then up its staircase. Michael reaches her just outside the door to her place and tackles her to the floor.
No, not here!
Oh, yes, right here.
You can't! always cheat.
And I always will. As long as I get you in the end.
And now it's clear these two are not the strangers they pretend to be. And this line is also prophetic, I think.
Yeah.
He will always cheat as long as he gets her in the end, despite what the end of the film would have you believe. We cut inside the apartment they share moments later, and Katherine is taking a shower while Michael shouts over the streaming of the showerhead. Katherine asks him to repeat himself louder, and eventually he half-heartedly proposes under his breath.
I guess it doesn't matter anyway. I wanted to know if you'd marry me.
You want to marry me?
Yeah.
For better or worse? In sickness and in health?
Uh-huh.
She doesn't seem convinced he's ready to commit to marriage vows, and asks for a night to mull over the proposal. The next morning, he's still talking her into the deal while cooking breakfast wearing an apron over just boxers. She teases him more while he enumerates the benefits of a lifelong partnership, and she thinks they could stand to live together a bit longer first.
We've been living together for years.
Years? We've been living together for 10 months.
Well, it seems like years.
As revenge for this joke, she grabs a waffle and shoves it into his boxers and then runs bottomless out of the room laughing. He gives her until the weekend's family picnic to decide. She finally admits she's worried that he's not ready to swear off all other women.
How do you know you won't find somebody better than me? Somebody with more style, somebody with more intelligence, somebody with more, sex appeal. Where are you going?
You convinced me. I'm gonna keep looking.
Michael.
Eventually, he drags a yes out of her, and they celebrate. Later, we see Tommy and Michael on another walk during the picnic, and Tommy reminds him that the sex addiction he was complaining about earlier this week might throw a wrench into things, but Michael says he can change.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. How do you plan to bring about this little miracle? Are you going to tie a knot in it? Willpower.
Rather than continue arguing with his brother, Tommy wagers $82 from his wallet that Michael can't stick to the plan. At first, Michael is insulted, but Tommy points out that winning the bet will motivate him to change.
Why not try willpower before you get married?
Oh yeah. We cut to an audition, and a girl recites lines from a script about an armistice being signed in the War of the Sexes. Michael is coaching her weak performance and asks her to try again until she breaks into tears. She's panicking because her efforts to work as a professional actress have thus far been fruitless, and she's running out of money. He assures her that eventually an audition will come through, but she's been on hundreds already.
I can tell you right now what your problem is.
What?
You have to stop taking no for an answer.
We see Michael and Katherine walking together, and he asks when they will break the news to her BFF Walter. She tells him they're seeing Walter and his new girlfriend this weekend. Michael knows Walter has never considered him good enough for Katherine, but she insists he's warmed to Michael. They take a taxi to a mattress store because Katherine has some weird superstition about starting a marriage with a fresh bed. Inside, Michael and Katherine play the game where they pretend not to know each other and torture a brand new store employee by pretending to christen a bed together under the covers on the sales floor.
I feel like this one is a little less bad than the other one. Because the other one, like, you're literally chasing a woman down the street.
Right.
Like, I feel like cops should be called and, like, or some good Samaritan should try to, like, stop this man.
I think that's part of the kink of it, though, is that they get off on people thinking that something, like, weirdly sexual is going on.
But at least in this situation, like,
it's not like
it's
a victim
weird, but it
and
looks like
criminal.
everything is consensual.
Yeah.
The one
Right,
where
right.
she's running away seems like somebody should have intervened, and I'm kind of upset that nobody thought they should do
Well, in the
anything.
80s, that's just how you approached women.
Okay.
We cut from the public sex kink to an orchestra on stage. Katherine watches Walter perform through tiny binoculars, and when she hands them to Michael, he finds Walter's soon-to-be-introduced girlfriend, Philomena, played by Wendie Malick, also in the orchestra, and suggestively moistening the reed of her instrument with her mouth. We jump from the end of the song to the couples taking seats together around a table in a fancy restaurant. We learn early in the chat that Walter and Katherine met when he was teaching her at Juilliard, but she talks down her skills as a pianist and claims to only play for fun now, but Walter is clearly a fan. Michael drags his feet announcing their engagement, so Walter has ample time to feign genuine excitement. He calls to a waiter and orders their finest champagne. Understanding their relationship, Michael steps away from the table to buy cigarettes and give the lifelong platonic friends privacy to be honest with each other. Philomena takes his cue and follows him away. Alone together, Walter admits he is not confident that Michael is up to his personal standard for marriage material. Philomena and Michael find each other in the back room and split a cigarette. Michael is surprised she even smokes.
I have 2 a day. One after a concert and one after sex. What about you?
Me, I smoke constantly. I try to quit once a month, but I can't seem to put them down.
But I wanted him to say something like, I smoke 5 or 6 a day, one after sex. Philomena talks about cigarettes as phallic symbols. She makes it sound like she gets horny for them and sometimes smokes a pack a day.
Thought you only smoked 2 a day.
I cheat.
He reads her loud and clear, but we don't see him take this any further. Yet. Brother Tommy helps him pick out rings for the ceremony. Michael thinks all the rings are too tight, but only as a metaphor for his discomfort with the entire concept of marriage. Which begs the question I'll probably come back to moving forward. Why does this guy, of all people, want to get married?
Yeah.
Right.
Why? We never explain it. His brother asks him point blank and he says, I'll tell you this weekend. And then we never get that moment. He never actually tells him why he suddenly wants to get married. Katherine has not been pressuring him at all. In fact, the exact opposite, and he's whining to his brother all the time about his instant obsession with every woman he meets, and yet he is for some reason demanding to box himself into an agreement that seems to go entirely against his own nature for no foreseeable benefit. We cut now to a woman in lingerie, stroking a pillow in a fluffy bed and staring right into camera. She speaks seductively, but the words are suddenly an advertising spiel for a mattress brand. And in a reverse angle, we see the horny crew of a commercial for down-on mattresses.
So if you want to get more fun out of bed, get down on it. For people who do more than sleep at night.
And this is the second time that we've seen Wallace Shawn with no lines.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell, man?
Why is he in here? After the shoot wraps later, Michael is still on set well into the night, and the spokesgirl senses tension and offers him a massage. As she digs in hard with her elbows, he watches her work in a nearby mirror and smiles at the beautiful woman on his back, with her lingerie practically falling off of her as she works the knots in his back. We jump right to the wedding rehearsal, and everyone is standing around the altar, yawning and checking their watches, until Michael comes running into the church late, blaming his work schedule. Tommy doesn't believe this excuse and discreetly passes him a kerchief to wipe the lip gloss off his ears. Sometime later, Michael wastes energy trying to convince Tommy that he's making progress and taking his mission seriously. But why, though? Why is he so insistent on this challenge?
And he's already failed.
Right, yeah.
I mean, presumably.
His motivation for this goal is never remotely hinted at, so the whole premise seems forced. For whatever reason, Tommy thinks he's developed a tool to help his brother. He tells him to go buy a notebook and keep track of every temptation he encounters in the course of his life. Write down every detail of the interaction and overanalyze it to hell until it's not sexy anymore. He's basically taking the strategy of a successful smoke enders anti-smoking program, but replaced the nicotine addiction with sex addiction, and Michael seems hopeful for the first time. As the viewer, we're expecting this is going to be a situation where he keeps these logs and then his wife will eventually find them and think he's been cheating. But that's not it at all. He's just going to do this and take these logs and then we'll never really come back to them in any important way.
Yeah. He really needed to join that really aggressive anti-smoking campaign from Cat's Eye.
Yeah, or Fatso, where they come into your house and
Yeah.
like break all your shit, chain all your cabinets closed. Katherine goes wedding dress shopping with her mother, but the whole time she's showing off her cold feet and worries that marriage will kill their sex life. Mother doesn't even pretend she's mistaken. We cut now to the aftermath of the wedding ceremony as rice is tossed over the heads of the happy couple.
Don't do that. Public service announcement.
The rice thing?
Yeah, don't.
Is it
don't
bad
throw
for the
rice.
birds or
it's
something?
It's bad for the boys.
Exploding pigeons.
Mm-hmm.
Exploding?
Well, they get bloated and die.
Don't we all? On their wedding night, Katherine asks how Michael is so confident he can stick to his vows, and he admits he bet his brother money that he'd be a good husband, and he can't stand to lose a bet. We get a montage of Michael working on sets with scantily clad women, and seeing beautiful women in shops, or jogging through the park. After each interaction, he takes out his notebook to jot down the details.
It also doesn't help that earlier in the movie we established, or he establishes that he has some kind of like extreme male charisma. That just seems to attract women.
Yeah.
And they're all overly flirtatious with him.
Right.
And that's why he has to sleep with them.
And the wedding ring isn't helping either.
I'm just going to jump in here. I just Googled it. It's a myth. They
The
don't
rice
explode. They don't get bloated. Many birds, in fact, eat wild rice, so it's fine.
Okay.
There you go.
At the end of the montage, we see he has an entire drawer in his office overflowing with notebooks, meaning he's already filled 20 or 30 of these. Later, in Central Park, he crosses paths with an ex-girlfriend, and she congratulates him on his recent marriage. She confesses to some surprise because he never seemed like the marrying type, but he explains it was just time, and he found the perfect partner. Sandy assumes he means that Katherine is cool with him sleeping around, but he assures her those days are behind him. To test his claims, she invites him to lunch soon, and he agrees immediately. At home that night, Michael is changing out of his work shirt in the bedroom when he spots the woman across the alley vacuuming her apartment in the nude. He's distracted from dinner in the kitchen and claims he's not hungry. Katherine tells him not eating her cooking will certainly lead to divorce. She says he's been talking in his sleep, but the message is neither interesting nor relevant to the film.
What was it?
The bets are on the table.
Oh, I bet Tommy I could quit smoking.
Is he covering something up here? He already told her he bet money that he'd be a good husband. Yeah. So was there a second bet in this story that I missed? Because otherwise this scene provides nothing. I actually don't know if I get the point of any scene for the rest of the movie, though. For instance, we cut now to another meeting of the brothers beside Delacourt Clock in Central Park. Evidently, Michael has called this meeting because not fucking around on Katherine has somehow affected his appetite and sleep schedule. He thinks he owes it to her to resume his infidelities so she won't have to put up with a tired and satiated husband.
But I'm not the person Katherine married. Maybe I'm doing the marriage more harm than good.
You mean if you don't start fooling around, you may wreck the marriage? I gotta hand it to you, kid. That is the best rationalization I have ever heard in my life.
So moving forward, the audience can't be expected to care about Michael at all. He doesn't understand why he can't just have sex with other people on the side, which he was doing at the start of the film, and then suddenly, and without impetus, made it his life's goal to stop doing. Tommy asks if Michael would care about Katherine sleeping around, and he lies that he would be fine with it. We cut back to the office where Michael works as a something. Who knows? It isn't important to the screenwriter, so he never bothers to explain it. Sometimes he's on movie sets, sometimes he's coaching actors at auditions, sometimes he's in an office assigning workers to cases.
Yeah, it seems like he might be a casting agent, but I'm not sure.
Or a producer or something. Right now, he's for some reason giving his coworker Oliver, played by Wallace Shawn, busy work. It's a non-profit assignment. Katherine is teaching grade school kids and needs help getting them to nap in class, so Michael dreamed up a sort of lullaby video project that they could shoot for free at the production house, or wherever it is that Michael works. For some reason, Oliver agrees to work on this nonsense project for free. Michael calls Oliver back to ask, after 14 years married, how has he come to deal with the problem of temptation from other women? Oliver pretends it's a very serious problem, and women are hitting on him all day out there.
You know, it's a matter of pride with me. I mean, if a woman I don't know tries to talk to me, I just look the other way. If there's one thing I just refuse to be, it's a sex object.
We get another montage of Michael encountering beautiful women on the streets of New York. The women grow denser and crowd the sidewalks until Michael is just racing to escape them. He stops in Central Park to catch his breath and smoke a cigarette. Before he can even light it, Walter's girlfriend, Philomena, leans into frame with a lighter, and we jump cut to him in her bed, redressing and pretending to be disappointed with himself.
Can we do one of those videos where we cut lines in from a movie into their animated character mouths?
What would it be here?
Well, just the Wallace Shawn line and put it over like...
If there's one thing I refuse to be, it's a sex object.
Yeah, but
as Rex.
As Rex, yeah,
That's
exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
But I don't want to use my head.
Oh, God, that's a totally different meaning.
Just ramming him right into Andy's mom.
Oh, God.
What the hell? Michael confesses that this is the first time he's stepped outside of his marriage, and for some reason he feels bad about it, unlike the dozen times he cheated on Katherine before they were married, including minutes before their wedding rehearsal. On the way home, he stops by a flower shop to alleviate his guilt with a gift for Katherine, but right outside the apartment he throws the flowers away, rethinking the gesture.
See, and there was a great opportunity for a joke when he's in the florist. He says, like, what do you recommend for I just cheated on my wife? He should have recommended a flower. Oh, for that, you're going to want daisies.
Yeah, hydrangeas. That's for cheating.
Oh, hydrangeas. That's cool.
Inside, he surprises Katherine with a video cassette of the project he shot for her to screen in class.
I hope you have a giant Betamax player because it's one of those like professional studio tapes.
Yeah, apparently she does, though.
This is Mother of Christ. They have everything.
Yeah, they got a full Beta SP deck.
I taped a fairy tale to put your little girls to sleep.
Whew. You really had me worried there for a minute.
Why?
I thought it was flowers.
Which I guess she would have interpreted as an apology for cheating, or is the joke here that she would have preferred flowers?
I think it's the former.
Later they watch the tape and Michael is dressed as the Sandman, standing in front of a crescent moon with a face. He reads a story to camera. At the start of the tale, he tosses a handful of glitter in the air to send the class to sleep. Do you guys recall the last time we saw a character throw a handful of glitter in the air to introduce something?
Soggy Bottom USA.
There you go. Every time Dusty Wheeler appeared in town, her agent Smilin' Jack would toss a handful of glitter or confetti into the air. Somehow, the video works in class, and another teacher is jealous of Catherine's thoughtful, spontaneous husband. Katherine wishes she could surprise Michael the same way, and her fellow teacher confesses to showing up at the husband's office in just a trench coat to surprise him. We cut to the set of a commercial for Platinum Bubble Bath, and a blonde model sits in a tub full of bubbles while the crew prepare to record a take. Katherine calls the set and asks Michael to make another video for tomorrow. After they've wrapped for the day, Michael dresses as Sandman again and returns to the Crescent Moon set to record another story.
I feel like that's a big ask.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Hey, can you record something every night?
Well, I mean, she had to assume that he left that set up, because otherwise it would be a much bigger ask. But the fact that they already built it and it's just there, and he has the cameras and he has the tapes, it's really little work for him to flip some lights on and record it. It's like the setup that I want to eventually get for this. But I think the only reason she's even asking for this is because she wants him to work late so she can surprise him later.
Oh, okay.
Back in their apartment, we see Katherine in a trench coat trying to work up the nerve to drive out to the production house to surprise him.
I feel like I would have the trench coat and be fully dressed, get to the studio, and then
No. You got to go there naked. I mean, they fucked in the stairwell yesterday, so who cares? Just go straight naked. Don't even wear a trench coat.
She's definitely worried about this more than somebody who does that should be.
Recording the second video, Michael thinks he can hear someone on set, and as he follows the sounds around the building, he finds Nancy Barwood, the new spokeswoman for Tabor Tools. It's the woman he pushed to tears during her audition. She wanted to thank him for his support and advice, because she scored an incredible contract with Tabor after his lesson to stop taking no for an answer. She's here to repay his kindnesses with her body, and he says no. But as we just learned, she is immune to no now.
He taught her the secret.
He also doesn't actually say no. This isn't rape, he's just submitting to it without any observable protest. Sometime later, Katherine finally arrives to the studio and sneaks inside. She finds the Crescent Moon set, and then she turns around to see a lit curtain with the shadowed silhouettes of a naked man and woman dressing after sex. She marches around the curtain to find Michael and Nancy Barwood half naked together.
Michael!
He follows her out, reciting all the classics. It's not what you think. I didn't mean this to happen. I wasn't thinking. I can explain. And all the while, she's backing away horrified.
Yeah, it's actually really creepy. It's like she's about to be attacked by a killer.
We see her sitting at a kitchen table, and a man walks up to hand her a steaming coffee mug. I think we're supposed to assume this is Michael and be angry that she's already making up with him. But when the man sits down with her, it's her friend Walter, and she's staying at his place for a bit. Michael chats with Tommy in Central Park again and admits he owes his brother $82. He also admits that he should never have gotten married, and Tommy struggles not to agree out loud. Tommy takes his brother through Central Park Zoo and introduces him to an ape named Phil. He tries to communicate something about human anatomy by pointing out that among the apes, humans have both the biggest brains and the biggest dicks. For illustrative purposes, he nicknames the brain Albert, presumably after Einstein, and the dick is Duke. He claims that Albert and Duke get along fine until Albert decides it's time to get married. Albert tricks Duke into agreeing by explaining Duke can have sex every night if he agrees. This whole bargain, as Tommy describes it, wouldn't really relate to his brother's situation from the start of the film, because Michael was already having all the sex he wanted with every random person who came along. Duke from the story eventually tires of being with the same person and rebels against the agreement. The wife of Albert and Duke catches on quick to Duke's indiscretions and packs her bags to leave them both.
I married both of you, and one of you is not good enough. And off she goes, into the sunset.
Michael asks how he can hope to save his marriage, and Tommy again asks why he would even bother if Katherine alone can't possibly satisfy him, but we cut away quickly so the film never has to explain why this man, who is obsessed with womanizing and who doesn't even seem to care about his wife, is desperate to chain himself to her forever. In Katherine's classroom, she reads the kids a story, but they're distracted when the Sandman appears in the window of her classroom door. Michael's here at her workplace, interrupting her job to downplay the importance of his cheating, and she basically tells him she's not ready to talk with him about it.
He also lays on the old, I understand how you feel.
Right, yeah.
Which he absolutely does not.
How could you possibly understand it if you have not gone through this at all? Tommy and Michael meet for drinks because this film has no idea what it's doing, so it just follows the worthless formula of Michael bouncing from wife to brother every other scene. Tommy admits that his own wife Marie cheated on him once. Then he speaks with Michael as though his reconciliation with Katherine is a foregone conclusion, and reminds him that Katherine will lash out and take extreme steps in this phase of their temporary squabbling, and Michael will just have to put up with it and wait for her to come back so that he can get everything he wants without changing as a person. I guess as a means to put her off balance, Michael decides to visit his wife again and chooses right in the middle of a field hockey game against the Mother of Christ rivals, Our Lady of Victory. He can't risk approaching her when she can devote her full attention to the conversation.
What are you doing here?
He blames his appearance on her mom, who called the apartment a bunch of times last night looking for her. Because he's a boomer, he had no choice but to answer the phone all 5 times and cleverly offered 5 different excuses because this character is a moron. He talks to her like she's the one being unreasonable and invites her back home where they can at least talk about what happened. Their argument is interrupted when Sue, one of the girls from Katherine's team, is accidentally struck in the arm with a field hockey stick. Katherine considers calling an ambulance, but Michael claims he can carry the girl to Fred Bernstein faster. A quick Googling taught me absolutely nothing about how someone named or called Fred Bernstein might be an acceptable substitute for a hospital. It must just be a doctor in the film.
Also, where are the girl's parents?
I guess they get dropped off at this practice and come back hours later to pick them up, because we do see the parent eventually.
Yeah, eventually. Like, they're in the hospital, like, waiting, and then she has a cast on. It's like, where
It's been
are the
2 days.
Yeah.
Where were you?
Unless this is like a boarding school.
I don't know.
The parents just aren't even around.
Katherine and Michael walk her to a doctor, and we see them wait together with Sue at a restaurant until her mom shows up to collect her. The next day, Katherine's mom shows up, positively giddy, because she just learned her daughter and son-in-law are separated, and she wants to hear all the gossip. Katherine doesn't have much to share. He cheated, and she left. Mom says that's boring, and she should have made a big immature scene and embarrassed herself. Katherine tells her she can't know how she'd react, since she's never been in the same situation, and her mom drops the truth bomb that, of course she has. This is 1982. Every wife in the world was cheated on constantly, and they all thought of it as a forgivable inconvenience. They made their husbands jump through a few hoops, and then went back to business as usual with a man who didn't respect them for the rest of their lives. Katherine's mom admits that on the way to forgiving her dad, she broke every bone in the man's foot by crushing it with a lead doorstop. It never set right, and he experienced pain for the rest of his life, and for sure went on cheating on this woman for decades, since she accidentally confessed that she is too lazy to find a new man and too desperate to go on without one. The women agree it's funnier and more healthy to maim your spouse and hate each other forever than it would be for either of them to seek happiness elsewhere.
I mean, you never wondered why he walks with a limp?
Well, he always told me it was a war wound.
Well, I guess it was, in a way.
Her mom claims that leaving her cheating husband is tantamount to surrendering, but stubbornly staying married is the only way to fight back, which sounds completely backwards to me. If you really want to win this fight, give your husband everything he wants forever. Just keep forgiving him for fucking around. He'll be so bummed about it. We cut now to a wedding, and it seems at first like Michael and Katherine are renewing their vows, but the priest's speech takes a turn.
We are gathered here today in the presence of the fruits of the world to join in holy matrimony this kiwi and this mango.
And it turns out this is the set of a commercial for a tropical fruit drink. Katherine visits Michael at his job to deliver a message. Cheating is one thing, but she can't forgive the dishonesty. Not yet, anyway. That night, we see him writing a letter. Dear Katherine, I've been thinking all day about what you said at the studio. Of course you were right. The dishonesty behind the act is much worse than the act. It seems like it's him trying to say that the act isn't that big a deal.
Well, and here's the thing, though. He was never dishonest about the act.
Yeah, he never lied and said he wasn't cheating on her.
Yeah.
He just didn't tell her he was cheating on her.
Mm-hmm. She caught him in the act.
Yeah.
So it's not like...
I guess he did lie when he was like, it's not what you think. Because it's like,
oh, that's
true. It blatantly is. In the middle of his letter, he sees some storyboards for one of his commercials, and it inspires him to rip the apology out of his typewriter and write up something more salacious, I guess. I guess that's the only point of him looking at the storyboards, because he was like, this needs to be a sexier apology. Mm-hmm. His new, significantly less advisable plan is to type a list of all the women he's cheated on her with. He jogs across town to Walter's apartment where she's been staying. Walter tries to pretend she's not here, but Michael pushes his way in and shoves Walter against the wall for a chance to speak privately with his wife.
You want me to call the police?
That's okay, I'm fine.
He tells her she hit the nail on the head, calling out his dishonesty yesterday, and to illustrate the extent of his dishonesty, he gives her the list of women he's cheated with. He tells her that he'll do anything she asks for another chance.
Katherine, I'll kill for you. I'll die for you. Please. Say something.
I feel like saying you would do outlandish things that you definitely wouldn't do is the wrong strategy for convincing her you're taking this seriously. Either way, I wish he'd said, go kill the girl I caught you with. And the rest of the movie is just a murder trial, and Katherine pretends not to know him anymore.
The writing and reading of the letter of like all these women that he's slept with reminded me a lot of the coffee table book from Throw Mama from the Train.
Okay.
Of 100 girls I'd like to pork.
She doesn't bother to respond, and when he tries to leave the room, she breaks a field hockey stick across his back and then pushes through the door in front of him to exit.
Michael?
Maybe you'd like me to call the police.
Early the next morning, there's a knock at Michael's door, and when he answers, Katherine walks in. She apologizes for attacking him. Now it's her turn to confess to her half of the wrongdoing.
Well, the fact of the matter is I've been just as dishonest as you have.
No, she never cheated on him, but she was also dishonest, because she had always suspected he was cheating and never brought it up with him. So they're basically equally monstrous, because they both kept his secret for so long. Screenwriters like this actually make me nauseous. Fortunately, she follows up her big confession by announcing that she's decided to file for divorce. Michael promises he can change if she gives him another chance, but they both know he can't. For some reason, Michael is very sad that he can soon sleep with whoever he wants and it won't hurt Katherine anymore. Apparently, it's less fun when it's allowed. Back at his office, he confides in coworker Oliver that he's headed for divorce, and Oliver can sympathize and tells him divorce is a tough 6 months, but he'll bounce right back.
I thought you were married for 14 years.
Yeah, but not to the same woman. I've been married 3 times.
You're kidding.
No. That's the good thing about marriage. It's the only real cure for divorce.
What I thought this moment was going to be was like that moment in The Wedding Crashers where they realize, oh man, this is who I'm going to end up like if I keep marrying and getting divorced, like because I can't keep it in my pants. This is who I will end up as.
Which person?
Oliver.
Oh, he thought he would become like Oliver?
Yeah, because like he's like, oh, he's been married for 14 years, but now he finds out, oh no, he's constantly getting divorced because he's constantly cheating on his wives.
Right. It reminds me of Modern Romance when he's at the payphone and he wants to call Katherine Harold in the middle of the night, and there's like this old lecherous man who's like, who's there? There's someone in your apartment. I can hear them breathing. I'm coming over. I'm right outside anyway. And it's like, oh God, like that is the person who he's going to grow into, but he has no self-awareness, so he has no idea that that's what's happening. Oliver mentions that Sue, the girl from the Mother of Christ field hockey team, dropped off a gift for Michael. And I decided the only way this film could win me back is if it ends with Michael's marriage to Sue. It's just like, make this guy a full fucking monster if that's what we're going to do with this. When he opens the gift, there's a stuffed animal snake inside, suggesting either that the gift is random or that Katherine has unprofessionally shared his indiscretions with the class.
Yeah, like there's a lot of like, considering that this is like a Catholic school, there's a lot of like symbolism in choosing the serpent as a gift.
I really hope that she just went back and said like, so anyway, my husband has gone the way of Satan, and here's what he did. Don't do that. Next, we see her walking through a dark apartment to a piano for the corniest moment in the entire film. She uses her established piano skills to play the wedding march for a moment, and when she works herself into a cry, she smashes the keys to break down. This is the most on-the-nose garbage writing in the entire movie. It's actually embarrassing. At home, Michael rolls over in bed and sees the snake and is inspired to produce another episode of the Sandman series, which has now been adapted by Netflix. I heard.
Yeah. I mean, are we also bringing up the sexual indiscretions of Neil Gaiman?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Oh, that means that show's not coming back, doesn't it?
At Walter's place, Katherine wanders into his bedroom one night and asks why he's never tried to sleep with her. He explains that he values their friendship and didn't want to jeopardize it by complicating it. Unfortunately, by asking the question in the first place, she has probably already tanked it, because now his choices are to have sex with her and probably never talk to her again, or reject her and probably never talk to her again. Oh well. In the middle of the night, Michael is at the door again, and when Walter answers, he gives Michael an update on the situation here.
Walter, I'm sorry to bother you so late. I have something for Katherine. I'd like to give it to her.
I'm afraid you picked a bad time. Catherine's in bed. With me.
I feel like he's actually out of line announcing this to Michael without her permission.
right?
But Michael's also just like, I can just barge into this place anytime I want because my wife is here.
But Katherine is surprisingly not upset that he said that. But it's like they're in the process of being divorced. And if he can like prove that they both had relationships outside of the marriage, even if he had his first, it's going to affect like a settlement and money that she could get in the future. And he really shouldn't have said anything like this to Michael, especially when he was weirdly violent the last time he came here. Michael is disoriented by the revelation and hands off the new Sandman episode as he retreats outside. We see him doing a sad walk home on the dark streets of the city. Sometime later, Michael and Tommy meet in Central Park again. Michael shares an amazing revelation he's had. He says that he convinced his penis that all women in the world mean nothing compared to the one woman he truly loves. The implication being, apparently, that he loves Katherine, but we see no evidence of that. He treats her the same as he treats every other woman in this universe. Tommy is for some reason impressed, even though Michael has claimed to solve his sex addiction in every other scene of the film and been lying every time.
There's only one thing wrong.
What?
I did it too late.
Yeah, that's actually weird. Why did you convince your dick to love only Katherine after she left you for good? Maybe you should have found another wife first. We cut to Katherine's class, and she puts on the new episode of the Sandman fairy tales for the kids.
I really would have screened this first.
Right? Yeah. I thought at first that because he's about to record a second episode for her, and he's on that stage when suddenly that girl walked in and they had sex, and I was worried that she was going to put this tape on, and it was going to be him starting to tell the last story, and then suddenly it's like their shadows having sex behind a curtain, and all these kids are watching it. But luckily, no. This is the third episode that he shot. He didn't edit it wrong. I thought maybe that would come up at the end of this episode. So it's like he wins her back over, and then suddenly it's like there's a blooper reel of them having sex in the background. It's like, oops. Instead of an established fairy tale, he shares the story of Albert and Duke, but changes them from a brain and a penis to just being two snakes. They formed a polyamorous relationship with a human princess, and already Katherine is in derelict of her duty to stop the tape and apologize for what the class has already seen, but she lets it keep going. I want to see where this is headed. In exchange for her hand in marriage, the snakes promised never to turn their backs on her. One day, the trio disagreed on an activity to pass the time, and the snakes fought for hours about what to do until they agreed to let the princess pick. And they came home to a note from the princess. Apparently, disagreeing about what activities to partake in counts as turning their backs on her, so she left.
This is so weird.
Yeah, the story makes no sense. They came to the proper conclusion, which is, let's ask her what she wants to do. Also, she's gone? Oh, because she hates us because we didn't agree on the same thing right away.
I don't think this correlates at all to their story.
Nothing to do with the story. Even though that's not what turning your back means, and it relates not at all to the story Tommy originally made up or the real-life relationship of Michael and Katherine. To be fair, the brain cock metaphor has been terrible the entire time, and somehow it makes even less sense translated into a fairy tale for children. But the scene makes Katherine look like a brainless child when she tears up over these snakes and a princess suffering marital problems.
It's not just her. The children are crying.
How are they so invested in this story?
Yeah. I don't get it.
Even Michael is crying in character as the Sandman on screen. It ends with the snakes waiting in the woods for an eternity for the princess to return and give them another chance. The moral of the story apparently being,
because although a promise is a promise, even snakes deserve a second chance.
Wait, what?
The story doesn't prove the snakes deserve a second chance at all. It just proves that they're sad because they fucked up. That's it. We cut to Michael shopping one day from the same sidewalk market from the start of the film. Even the same older woman is here, nudging her friend as if to say, hey, this is that horned up guy I told you about that was ready to fuck a stranger in the street a few months ago. And I wanted the woman to be like, hey, so I coach field hockey too. When Michael gets home, he finds Katherine waiting for him, and apparently it's still the day after she slept with Walter. So she had class, showed that video, and this is that afternoon. She wants Michael to know it wasn't intended as revenge when she slept with Walter.
I was kind of hoping it was.
Probably because that would mean she was still mad, which means she still has feelings for him at all. She explains it was sheer curiosity, and the sex was good, but like he told his brother earlier, it was a base-level pleasure-seeking experience, and doesn't compare to being with a person you actually love. Amazingly, Michael nearly turns the conversation into an argument, but cooler heads prevail.
As good as that kind of sex is, it's not worth giving up a marriage for. So, if you can forget about last night, I suggest we try it again.
I really wanted for him to be misreading the conversation, and she meant she and Walter were going to try it again tonight. But nope. She's forgiving him for all his cheating if he can find it in his heart to forgive her for not at all cheating, and they hug each other tight.
As painful as it was, I'm glad you got even.
Even. Call 18 to 1 even.
I'm glad she doesn't let this comment sit, but it's still just boring and dumb that so many of these movies think that being married is more important than partners respecting each other. I have to assume these screenwriters write these movies to show their future wives and girlfriends to point to and say, see, don't you want them to get back together? She tells him that as much as it didn't mean anything to him, all the premarital cheating counts against him too, and doesn't even bother pointing out that he cheated on her twice during the marriage, first with Philomena and second with the Tabor Tool girl. She forbids him from stepping outside the relationship again, even just to gawk at the naked vacuumer next door. He promises her he's a changed man, and we as the audience know he is, not because of anything we've seen, but because he just told us right here that he is. Not only has she completely forgiven 18 affairs, but she wants to fuck right now, and asks for a real 5 seconds head start this time. The closest thing we get to proof he's changed is that he actually counts to 5 this time, but when he bursts through the apartment door after her, she trips him with a field hockey stick, and he tumbles down the stairs to his death.
Yeah.
Credits.
That is literally my line here. She trips him down the stairs. I hope he died.
Yeah.
You all right?
No, I'm not all right.
Good.
She runs outside and he chases her down the street in broad daylight. We hear Pat Ballard's rendition of Mr. Sandman as the camera backs away from the chase, and he eventually catches her in the grass beside a river through Central Park, and we freeze frame for the credits to roll over the city. The end. He really should have died in that last fall. That would have been great. It's like, I forgive you. Just kidding. Fuck you. And she like kicks him in the head on her way down the stairs. Yeah, that's a little sex. I could see why it failed real bad.
Yeah.
There's nothing here to appreciate or glow him onto. The writing isn't good. The story doesn't make any sense. And the metaphor that's supposed to be like this life-changing story that convinces a woman to go back to her husband is just a crappy 0 kids level story.
Or just the overall message of everybody cheats. You just got to get over it.
Right. There's been so many movies like that. And I feel like we've even had a handful that were like, no, you don't have to go back to that. Like An Unmarried Woman does a really good job of like, no, if someone does this to you, that can be the end of it. It's time to move on and find the next person. And the 80s has a really terrible track record of so many of these movies end up like, are you really going to throw away a marriage over this? And it's like
Shoot
yeah,
the Moon.
Who cares?
That was so infuriating.
Right. And I mean, even that, the point of that movie was that they shouldn't be together and that it's bad for their kids. But they still ended up together at the end of the story, and I was still really angry about it.
I don't have anything positive to say. And as much as I like all of the people who are in it, it was just not a joy to watch at all.
Well, I think the only positive thing I have to say about this is that in Temple of Doom, I find Kate Capshaw incredibly obnoxious.
Right.
And I don't think she's obnoxious in this movie.
I don't think she is.
She's
I think
pretty
you're right.
charming.
I think that there's also, this is her only film before Temple of Doom. This is literally her first film. She was the star opposite Tim Matheson on her first film. And because she was incredibly charming, she's very cute. She has a great energy. She feels like a leading lady right off the bat. She doesn't feel nervous about taking on the lead role of this story.
Yeah.
And it's pretty clear that Spielberg saw this and immediately was like, that's going to be the next one that we have. That she's going to be in the next one that we do because this girl's gorgeous.
Yeah, but they made her character so whiny and obnoxious.
They did.
And I know that it was intentional that she was supposed to not be a capable person.
Yeah.
But it was just annoying.
Yeah, yes. I think they tried too hard to avoid making just a second Marion. And so they went so far in the opposite direction that it was just irritating to everyone.
But then like Elsa was such a like good balance.
Well, that was perfect because it was like, oh, she's charming and she's attractive, but she's a Nazi. Yeah. So it's like, fuck you if you think she's cute. But yeah, I definitely see like Spielberg in the theater seeing this and going like, this girl has like leading lady all over her and she needs to be in the next movie, but they did kind of flub her character in Temple of Doom. But I still think she's great in Temple of Doom. There's also so many moments in this that remind me of that. Like when she goes to talk to Walter and she's like leaning on the door frame of his bedroom and she's like, why did you never try to sleep with me? And it's like the same scene from Temple of Doom where they're like across the hall from each other and constantly like leaning through each other's doorways and like daring each other to make the first move. I wouldn't doubt that fed into even the screenwriting process of Temple of Doom a little bit. But other than helping find the leading lady from Temple of Doom, I don't think this film really provided anything worthwhile. Thumbs down for me.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a thumbs down.
Yeah, thumbs down.
Where are we going letterboxed on this one?
I have it at 36 out of 49. So, it's not the worst. I have a below Out of the Blue and above Green Ice.
Richard?
Sorry, I was just moving it down one. I have it at 45,
wow.
which puts it below Soggy Bottom USA, but above Mad Men.
All right. I have it in 38 out of 49, which is just under Making Love and just above Green Ice also. The director here was Bruce Paltrow. This was his first theatrical directing gig after a handful of TV directing credits, and its lukewarm reception guided Paltrow back to television work until his second and final film directing credit on Duets, about the world of competitive karaoke, starring his own daughter Gwyneth Paltrow opposite Huey Lewis, playing her character's father in the film.
I actually really like that movie, too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It seems like that's a more personal story to him, so that makes sense. Gwyneth's godfather, by the way, is director Steven Spielberg, who would famously go on to cast and later marry Kate Capshaw, the leading lady of today's film.
And also direct Gwyneth Paltrow. Can you name the film?
Gwyneth Paltrow in a Steven Spielberg movie.
One scene.
One scene.
Only one scene?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Hook.
Is she in there too? There's so many freaking cameos in it.
She is playing young Wendie.
Oh, okay. At the beginning.
Yeah.
Bruce Paltrow was also famously married to actress Blythe Danner, the mother of Gwyneth, and he is the cousin of former Arizona Representative Gabrielle Giffords, who famously survived an assassination attempt during a public appearance in Tucson. Paltrow's only post-duet credits on IMDb was for a 2003 failed pilot for a series based on the Coen brothers' film Fargo. It starred Edie Falco as Marge Gunderson and was directed by Kathy Bates. A Fargo TV series directed by Kathy Bates. Writer credit here for Robert De Laurentiis. He previously wrote Green Ice, which me and Jesse ranked this directly above, but he followed Paltrow back to mostly television work after this, including credits on The O.C., The Umbrella Academy, and picking up where Paltrow left off, writing and producing several episodes of FX's more successful Fargo TV series adaptation. The music was from Georges Delerue. He started his career in French film. We've heard his work previously for Day of the Dolphin, Willie and Phil, True Confessions, and Rich and Famous. Later this season, he scores Partners and The Escape Artist, and later still Silkwood, Agnes of God, Platoon, Biloxi Blues, Twins, Beaches, Steel Magnolias, Joe vs. the Volcano, Black Robe, and Curly Sue. And of course, this film's theme song, Your Place or Mine, was performed by Melissa Manchester, written by Manchester, Allie Willis, and David Bryant. The cinematographer here was Ralph D. Bode. We've previously seen his work lighting Saturday Night Fever, Coal Miner's Daughter, Dressed to Kill, and Raggedy Man. Later, he lights Uncle Buck, Don Juan DeMarco, The Big Green, and the '99 Annie remake. The editor here was Bill Butler, who previously cut A Clockwork Orange, A Touch of Class, and so far on the show, Gorp, How to Beat the High Cost of Living, and On the Right Track. Later, he cuts Up the Creek and Cutting Class. Tim Matheson played Michael Donovan. Before this, he has television child actor credits on shows like Leave It to Beaver, My Three Sons, and as the voice of Johnny Quest on the 60s series. He also appears on the original Space Ghost series, 14 episodes of Bonanza, and in the late 70s, he rose to fame with roles in Animal House, The Apple Dumpling Gang Rides Again, and 1941. The only time we've seen him so far was as Officer Sweet, one of the 4 vigilante cops from Dirty Harry 2 Magnum Force. Later, he's in To Be or Not to Be, Up the Creek, Fletch, Drop Dead Fred. He's Chris Farley's politician brother in Black Sheep, after having appeared as Commander Warren in an episode of 1978's Black Sheep Squadron. He's in The Very Brady Sequel, and one of my favorite roles from him was as John Hoynes, vice president to Martin Sheen's Jed Bartlett on Aaron Sorkin's West Wing. Kate Capshaw played Katherine. This was her first film, and she had initially auditioned for a smaller role, but Paltrow cast her in the lead on the strength of that first impression. Her very next feature film role was Shanghai showgirl Willie Scott, the love interest of Raiders of the Lost Ark prequel, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. She also has credits in Dreamscape, Space Camp, and Black Rain. 7 years after their Temple of Doom collaboration, Capshaw was famously married to Steven Spielberg, who had previously directed her A Little Sex co-star Matheson in 1941. Capshaw and Spielberg remain married today. Edward Herrmann played Tommy. He also shows up in The Great Gatsby and so far on the show in The Paper Chase, The Day of the Dolphin, Harry's War, and Reds. Later this season, he's Paul Stanton in Death Valley and FDR in Annie. Later, he's Henry in Purple Rose of Cairo, Brown in The Man with One Red Shoe, Max in The Lost Boys, he's Richie Rich's dad in that movie, Rockefeller in Nixon, and he's also Richard Gilmore in 154 episodes of The Gilmore Girls. John Glover played Walter. Before this, he's in Seamus and Annie Hall. So far on the show, we've seen him in The American Success Company, The Mountain Men, Melvin and Howard, and The Incredible Shrinking Woman. Later, he appears in The Evil That Men Do, Scrooged, Gremlins 2, RoboCop 2, voices on The Animaniacs and Dinosaurs, and a handful of DC roles, voicing the Riddler in the Batman and Robin Sega CD game, Dr. Woodrow in the Batman and Robin movie, voicing the Riddler again on the Superman and Batman animated series. He played Lex Luthor's dad on Superman series Smallville, and he's the father of the villain in the first Shazam feature as well. So he's been the father of several DC villains.
Mm-hmm. I think he's great.
He's great in everything.
Yeah. Sometimes he just plays really small roles, like in Payback, Mel Gibson's Payback. He plays such a small character, but he's so great in it.
I think that Clamp character in Gremlins 2, though, is just so perfectly, like the perfect showcasing of his abilities.
Yeah.
I feel like basically it's the Scrooge character, but given a lot more leeway to take over scenes. Joan Copeland played Mrs. Harrison. That's Kate's mother. We've seen her previously in It's My Turn, and later she's in The Peacemaker, Jungle to Jungle, and Brother Bear. She was the younger sister of playwright Arthur Miller, and consequently the one-time sister-in-law of Marilyn Monroe, with whom she shared a birthday. Susanna Dalton played Nancy Barwood. We saw her last in Gloria and Paternity. Wendie Malick played Philomena. This was her first feature film appearance. Later she appears with John Glover in Scrooged as Frank Cross's sister-in-law. She also shows up in a MacGyver episode, and later recurring roles on Baywatch, Dream On, and maybe her most recognizable part as Nina Van Horn in 149 episodes of Just Shoot Me. She also has some great voice credits in series like Fillmore, Bratz, BoJack Horseman, and more recently as Ida in 39 episodes of The Owl House. She was also on the recently ended Young Sheldon, and currently running series Shrinking and the Night Court reboot. I feel like I've been sleeping on Shrinking. It seems like it could be a decent show.
Yeah, I keep thinking about it.
It's an Apple series, right?
It is.
Jason Segel and
Harrison
Harrison Ford are the two leads.
Yeah.
Wallace Shawn played Oliver. Before this, he's in Manhattan, Starting Over, and all that jazz. We've seen him now in Simon, Atlantic City, and My Dinner with Andre, for which he also has a writing credit, thanks to the nature of the performance. Later, he's in Mickey and Maude, Radio Days, and then he kind of exploded to fame as Vizzini in Rob Reiner's The Princess Bride. He also has a formidable voice acting career that includes Principal Mazer in a Goofy movie, Rex in the Toy Story films, and Mr. Incredible's boss at the start of that first film.
He's also the Grand Nagus.
Which one?
He's the Grand Nagus.
In what? What's that?
Star Trek.
Oh, okay.
He's a reoccurring character, the Grand Nagus, the head of the Ferengi Alliance.
I love that one scene, though, with Mr. Incredible where it's just about power and the power that a corporation can wield over someone with actual superpowers. We're supposed to help our people, starting with our stockholders. Who's helping them out? He also shows up in Canadian Bacon, Clueless, Vegas Vacation. He's Cyrus Rose in Gossip Girl, Charles Lester on The Good Wife, Winslow Elliott in Mozart in the Jungle, Dr. John Sturgis on Young Sheldon, and more recently as Father Ignatius on Evil. He also reunites with Edward Herrmann in Critical Care in 1997. Robert Burr played Joe Donovan. We've seen him now in The 7-Ups, Tattoo, and Ghost Story. Lee Curran played Marie Donovan. She appeared previously on the show for Reds, and her last credit was as a doctor in the 2005 TV movie prequel to Romy and Michelle's high school reunion. Lisa Dunsheath played Lucy, the down-on girl. She previously appeared as Sherry in The Prowler and Tulips in They All Laughed. Frankie Faison played Electrician. We've seen him so far in Permanent Vacation and Ragtime, and right around the corner he's back as Detective Brandt 2 weeks from now in Cat People. Later this season, he also returns for Hanky Panky, and beyond that in Chud, Exterminator 2, The Money Pit, Coming to America, Do the Right Thing, Free Jack, Money for Nothing, The Langoliers miniseries. But most famously for us, he plays The Lloyd in John Landis's The Stupids.
I didn't see him in this.
I didn't either, actually. After that, he's also in Hannibal, Down to Earth, Red Dragon, and he's Commissioner Burrell on The Wire. Sam Gray played Dr. Bernstein. We've seen him now as Inspector Grella in Christmas Evil and as the mayor in Wolfen. Carolyn Houlihan played bathing suit model. We saw her last as Karen in The Burning. This is her second and last feature film credit. Before either of these roles, she appeared as herself in a Miss USA pageant as the 1979 Miss Ohio. Elva Josephson played Sue Bradley. She played the younger version of Brooke Shields in The Blue Lagoon. She's back later this season in Author. Sagan Lewis played Michael's assistant. This was her first film credit. Later, she's Dr. Wade in 93 episodes of St. Elsewhere. Renee Lippen played Joan. We saw her last as Woody Allen's agent in Stardust Memories. Later, she shows up in Radio Days, That Thing You Do, and Celebrity. Mary Loomis played bathing suit model. She wrote the Care Bears theme and has lots of soundtrack credits for its reuse. Ronald McCone played Teresa's husband. He appeared previously in Gloria and Prince of the City, and he's back this season for Fighting Back, and later Broadway Danny Rose, The Pope of Greenwich Village, Goodfellas, and Casino. PJ Mann played Sandy. We saw her last as a So Fine dancer. Winston May played jewelry salesman. This is his second film credit, and after this is businessman in cab in Ghostbusters. Probably the guy being driven around by a ghost cab driver in the I Believe It's Magic montage. Lauren Sotner played Little Lucy. She's back later this season in Soup for One. Bill Smitrovich played Technician. This is his first feature film. Later he's in Splash, I think is Tom Hanks' dad, and later in Manhunter and Crazy People. He played Drew Thatcher, the father, in 83 episodes of Life Goes On. He also appears in The Phantom, Independence Day, Ghosts of Mississippi, Air Force One. He's Frank, the grocery store manager in Ted's 1 and 2, and more recently he played Judge Rothwax in Joker 2. John Tillinger played Sattler's sponsor. He played Simon Duvall in 3 Doctor Who's, and we saw him last as Dr. Heron in Resurrection. Sib Barnstable played Beauty. We saw her last in So Fine, and this was her last feature film credit on IMDb, but before the 80s, together with her twin sister Patricia Barnstable, they played the Bettys, the identical clone twin navigators of the ship on sci-fi parody series Quark. The show was created by Buck Henry. It's a Star Trek parody, and the ship's captain, the titular Adam Quark, is played by Richard Benjamin. It's fun.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It only lasted 8 episodes, but worth checking out, I would say.
When did that come out?
Late 70s.
Okay.
Goretta played Gallery Patron. We saw her last in Rollover during a party scene. Later, she's Rosemary in Demons and Coster in Bruno Mattei's Terminator 2. Not to be confused with the actual Terminator 2. John Eric Hexum played Game Audience uncredited. We saw him last also uncredited in Death Trap, and in our review of that episode, we detailed the unfortunate circumstances of his death on the set of the TV series Cover Up, so you can check out our review of Death Trap to hear more about that. Paul Kosapod played Kiwi, the Kiwi getting married in that scene. He was the robbery victim in Hero at Large, and then after this film, he wasn't credited again until an appearance last year in the IFC Films comedy Paint, starring Owen Wilson as Carl Nagel, a sort of modern-day parody of Bob Ross. Susan Phelps played Lady in Restaurant. She was also Lady Walking in Park in Paternity. I think that's everything for A Little Sex. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, you can find all our socials at linktree/vintagevideopod. If you enjoy what we're doing, consider giving us a review on iTunes. I don't believe it helps visibility, but it's good for morale. And if you really like the show, maybe you should join our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast for access to all our monthly 70s reviews and a hand in choosing next month's film. Patrons are currently choosing between fewer than usual, but very sexual titles this time. A Haunted Turkish Bathhouse. Kazuhiko Yamaguchi's erotic horror film about the vengeful ghost of a woman sold to a brothel by her husband to cover his gambling debts. It stars Naomi Tani, Hideo Murata, Misa Ohara, and Taki Toniyama.
Didn't we just watch a movie that had selling your... Well, it was his daughter.
It was his daughter, not his wife, yeah.
Okay.
You're talking about Lady Snowblood?
Lady Snowblood, yep.
Dark Star. John Carpenter's inaugural film, an independent sci-fi comedy from a Dan O'Bannon script about the crew of a dysfunctional starship on a 20-year mission to destroy other unstable planets. It stars Brian Norrell, Dan O'Bannon, Barbara Knapp as the computer, John Carpenter himself as the voice of Talby, and Nick Castle as the alien. Eskimo Nell, Martin Campbell's British sex comedy about a film crew tasked with shooting multiple versions of an erotic film to satisfy the demands of multiple teams of backers, all expecting different genres of product. It stars Roy Kinnear, Anna Quayle, Katie Manning, Michael Armstrong, and Terrence Edmond. Eyeball, Uberto Lenzi's giallo slasher about a serial killer in a red cape and hood targeting American tourists and stealing their eyeballs. It stars Martine Brochard, John Richardson, Inez Pellegrini, Andres Mahudo, and Murda Miller. Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, Don Edmonds' erotic Nazi-sploitation film about Ilsa, an evil Nazi death camp warden who subjects her prisoners to sexual torture in the name of medical experimentation. It stars Diane Thorne, Gregory Knopf, Tony Mumolo, and George Buck Flower for some reason. Vampira, aka Old Dracula, retitled as a parody of Young Frankenstein. Clive Donner's horror comedy film about an aging Dracula hosting tours of his own castle in search of new victims. It stars David Niven as Count Dracula, Teresa Graves, Nikki Henson, Jenny Linden, and Bernard Bresslaw. Snuff, Michael Findley's tasteless erotic exploitation retelling of the Manson family murders. It stars Margarita Amuchastegui, Anna Caro, Liliana Fernandez Blanco, and husband and wife filmmakers Michael and Roberta Findley. And finally, TNT Jackson, Cirio H. Santiago's blaxploitation martial arts actioner about a female karate expert who travels to Hong Kong in search of her brother's killer. And if it sounds at all like Firecracker to you, about a female karate expert traveling to the Philippines in search of her sister's killer, also from director Santiago and producer Roger Corman, I assure you it is entirely coincidental. TNT Jackson stars Jean Bell as TNT Jackson, Geanne, not to be confused with legendary stuntman Gene LaBelle, Chiquito as Dynamite Wong, Stan Shaw, Max Alvarado, and Pat Anderson for a 50th anniversary review next month. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Basket Case, which IMDb describes like so. A young man carrying a big basket that contains his extremely deformed, formerly conjoined twin brother seeks vengeance on the doctors who separated them against their will. We leave you now with the trailer for Basket Case.
What is the secret Dwayne is hiding in the basket?
What's in the basket?
Some of the tenants claim to have heard noises coming from this room. Like someone on a rampage.
What's in the basket?
You're that kid Needleman warned me about, the Bradley boy, the freak we separated.
I know an awful lot of guys, Dwayne. But you're different. What's in the basket?
What's in the basket?
What's in the basket?
My brother.
Open it, if you dare. Basket Case.